You know, there's a famous quote by a Nazi, Hermann Goering, during the Nuremberg trials. I am going to paraphrase, but ultimately what it boils down to is people don't necessarily like to go to war, but if you scare the hell out of them, you tell them there's an enemy, you can get them to go to war. In fact, here's a quote. Why, of course, the people don't want war. Why would some poor slob on a farm want to risk his life in a war when the best he can get out of it is come back to his farm in one piece? That's assuming he gets back there in one piece, of course. Naturally, the common people don't want war, neither in Russia or England or in America, nor for that matter in Germany. That is understood. But, after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it is a democracy or fascist dictatorship or parliament or communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them that they are being attacked and denounce the pacifists for the lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same way in any country. 1946. Prophetic. Sad that it's coming from a Nazi, and sad that for the most part it describes our reality, either in the United States or in the client states that join us in pursuits such as NATO that should have kind of went to the wayside at the same point when the Soviet Union went belly up, and we should have kept our promises. During the 2016 campaign, the outgoing president that received the Nobel Peace Prize had the immense distinction of dropping 26,000 bombs. 90% of those bombs, I put the links at the bottom. In some cases, 90% of those bombs hit the wrong people, meaning 90% of the people that we killed in many of these instances were innocent. The bombings that we were using, at that point, you can't even say you're bombing terrorists. You have to just say we're killing human beings. Donald Trump upped the ante on this, and it is going to be worse. Essentially, he allowed the CIA he got rid of some of the restrictions allowing more bombing and more killing of civilians. I'm making the point that in this country, we are murdering people en masse. And not just killing people on a large scale, we are supporting the coups, the dictatorships, the killings, the torturing, the putting in certain regimes, supporting terrorists in many respects. We recently had a situation in Idlib where the United States acted as if it was going to end the world in order to protect a group of terrorists. Tulsi Gabbard gets into Congress and denounces this, saying that her military service was somehow besmirched by the fact that we were willing to protect tens of thousands of terrorists. We need a radical redefinition of how we go about our affairs. Back during the Kennedy administration, there was talk of a missile gap. They completely talked up this idea of a missile gap over and over and over and over and again, scaring the public, dumping more money into the military, even though there was no missile gap. Or at the very least, they kept talking it up at the height of the Cold War. The goal was to get the public into a sense of fear, that there's an enemy out there, there's somebody that we need to fight, somebody we need to go after. That's not always true, however. There are times that there are enemies, that is true. But there are times where you also need to have a sober realization and look at the political discourse that's taking place and the political actors that are in your particular country and ask yourself on whether or not what they're saying is being done for political expedience or if there is a real enemy out there. We are spending nearly $1 trillion of our worth on killing other human beings, on bombs and bullets, things that tear and rip the flesh, things that incinerate other people that are just like me and they're just like you. And as I put the link at the bottom where you can see in many of these cases, these people are innocent, just civilians. They're just civilians. Your bridges are crumbling. Your roads are falling apart. There's places where you can't even get clean water in the richest country on the planet. You don't have high-speed rail. Is this what you want? Do you really want to be spending nearly $1 trillion of your worth on bombs and bullets and boats, the things that can kill and tear skin, when the basic services that are not provided to you go unprovided to you? We spend more than any other country on the planet combined, meaning all of the other countries combined don't equal up to what we're spending. We're going to spend $719 billion next year on killing other human beings. Is that really what you want? And shouldn't there be a political consequence for being willing to vote for a bill that is willing to give that much of the worth of this country into those pursuits? And understand, just because you're spending that much money doesn't necessarily mean that that's making you safer. Every person that you hit that's innocent is another terrorist that you're going to create, and somebody else is going to come after you. But you can make an argument that every terrorist that tries to come after you is another bullet that you have to create, which is another dollar that you're going to put in the hands of somebody. Do you really want weapons contractors to get this much of your worth? And is it a situation where there's an actual threat, meaning hunting down people in caves and shooting people in caves? Is that really worth $719 billion? And would that worth be better spent on areas into the country itself? I would make a point to you. In the same way that your health care, even though you spend twice as much, you don't get the same level of service. Why don't you believe that the same may be true for the military, especially from the standpoint of not auditing what takes place in regards to the way that their money is spent? I am putting forth to you that in the same way that not looking at Catholic priests and shock the shit when you find out they're molesting kids, that the worth that you're spending in the military is not necessarily going into the way that you're going. I guess I'm saying this in a weird way, but I'm trying to make the point that in the same way that we spend twice as much for healthcare, but we're like 30th in the world, why don't you believe that the same may be true, that you're not necessarily getting the bang for your buck for the $719 billion that you're going to spend next year? Back during the Soviet Revolution was started by women, believe it or not. Women going out saying, screaming, holding their fists, holding their placards, saying, we need to feed the people who are essentially defending the country. Something similar is taking place now. At some point, this Frankenstein that we have in this country, that is essentially a decoupling of what the public wants in the interest of the public, from the standpoint, the decoupling of what the public wants and what the country is doing, meaning what the government is doing, that gap needs to be destroyed. And there needs to be a consequence for people who are willing to dump loads of your money, loads of your worth, loads of your tax dollars into bombs and boats and bullets, as opposed to roads and healthcare, education, things that are internal to the country itself that will benefit the people of the country itself. The fact is, strength goes beyond the ability to punch somebody in the nose. Jeremy Corbyn standing in the well of Parliament with jeers, people from his own party booing him, boo, jeer, because he had the temerity to say, I need evidence before making some rash judgment that is going to put us in conflict with a nuclear power nation. That's strength. It is not the ability to drop 26,000 bombs. If you're a superpower and you dump a ton of money and you're the richest country on the planet, that is a relatively easy thing to waste money on. There is a different thing of being able to say we need to use our strength judiciously, that the goal of defense should be defense. This idea of a Department of War being changed into the Department of Defense. No, it is a Department of War. We've been using this as wars of aggression. And look back at what we've done over the past few years. We've committed horrors. Destroying Libya, destroying Iraq, destroying Afghanistan, invading Syria, illegally, mind you, invading Syria, and in an entire way creating an Orwellian justification that the United States, for all intents and purposes, is above the law, and anything that the president does, for the most part, is okay. That needs to be changed. We need to have a come to Jesus moment with regards to how we're wasting our worth and how that worth is being used to affect negative outcomes throughout the world. Not to mention, if the goal is to stop terrorism, killing civilians is not the way to do it. Right now, there's a women's march that is taking place. They're marching on DC. One of the things that I love about this women's march is that they were very clear that this was not going to be appropriated by the Democratic Party. That ultimately, they are marching to stop war and to bring this, you can say, this Frankenstein of a budget, this Frankenstein of a military that is lumbering about the world to a halt. Absolutely support this. And God, I wish them the best on this. It's time to say enough. I often wonder, where's the anti-war movement, and if the anti-war movement exists, and if people care about this. And I suspect people do care about this, but I suspect they care about this in a way where they have other concerns that are on their mind, that are on their forefront. And unfortunately, like Goering said at that Nuremberg trial, that the moment that you tell people there's a threat, and if you can surround them from the standpoint of getting the media to go along with this idea that there's a threat, and you can scream at the top of your lungs that there's a threat, that something is out to get you, that there's a monster, there's something that is trying to creep over and rip the dress off of Lady Liberty and grab his hands and grab her ass. If you can get that across and you can get the media to buy it, then you can get the public to buy into pretty much anything. The sad part is I've been reading Nazi quotes, and you'd be surprised, or maybe you won't be, how many relate to this thing of propaganda and getting a public that is typically, under normal circumstances, not necessarily into this mindset of murdering and killing other human beings because people want to believe that they're rational and civilized. But fact is, if the killing is taking somewhere else, then I don't have to watch that person die. I don't have to see that bomb go off. I don't have to see that person explode. I don't have to see this person ripped apart. I don't have to see the dictator or the crimes that take place after a particular country is destabilized. We're eating our Cheerios. We're playing our icebox. It's happening somewhere else. Fortunately, there are a few people who are willing to say, we care. And they're marching on Washington, D.C. today. This is a women's march. And I wish them all the best. I'm putting the links at the bottom for you to see it for yourself. I covered this story early on, and today is the day of the march. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's taking place right now. It's been taking place for the last few hours. So, all the best. All the luck. And God, I hope they got millions of people, even though I don't think they're going to get millions. And I'm saying thousands, but like the Million Man March, I'm thinking that's my head, that's context. I wish more people care. More people would care. And it kills me that they don't. It's as if, I'm not going to keep this video long because I have there's another video that needs to come up after this, but the Women's March has all of at the very least from the Progressive Soapbox, and I know that's not necessarily saying much, this and $1 get you a cup of coffee. But I wish you all the best, and I hope it goes well. Thanks so. I'll see you guys in a few. Bye-bye.